Good evening, Columbus, and everybody else that's listening outside of the Columbus area. I'm Nia Noelle, your host for tonight. Welcome to Wine Down Wednesday. This is episode 3. So today I have one of my good friends that is joining me because we have an issue going on here in Columbus and in a lot of other cities around the Columbus. The housing market is insane. So please welcome to the virtual stage my good friend, Michael Jones. Hi,
Hello.
Mike.
How are you? Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for coming. You and I talk a lot about housing, and something that people may not know about me is I'm a house junkie. I love watching HGTV. I love touring homes. I'm obsessed with homes. I have been since I was a little kid. I probably got it from my parents, honestly. But the market is insane right now in Columbus and a bunch of other places. So that's why I wanted to have you on today to talk about what is happening, because I know it has been absolutely crazy. So are you ready to talk about this crazy housing market that's happening right now?
I am ready. Let's
All
go.
right. So I want you to explain to people why the real estate market is the way it is right now. What caused it to be absolutely crazy?
So thank you for the question. It's basic principles, supply and demand. We have a great demand. People in Columbus in particular are looking to move to Columbus for job opportunities and all sorts of reasons. But as we continue to grow as a city, metropolitan area, more people want to move here, and we don't have enough houses for them. What we did at Columbus Realtors was look back at a period going back about 10 years and realized that over the past 10 years, the number of homes that we've brought to the market, new listings, really hasn't changed. It's been relatively the same. The big difference is the number of buyers, the amount of demand, the pent-up demand, if you will, for people wanting those limited number of houses. You may have somewhere, I think, about 35,000 homes that come on the market per year. And 10 years ago, we were selling between 50 to 55% of those homes as they came on. Now we're selling between 90 and 95%. So as soon as those come on, they're practically gone. So it's almost double.
Wow. So we've been hearing on the news that Columbus is booming, but a lot of people think that Columbus is a small town and that, there's no growth and everything here. But that alone should tell people that there's something special happening here in Central Ohio and that there are opportunities. Now, if someone is just moving here and they're just seeing this situation, how can we tell them how long this has been going on? Can you give us a perspective how long we've been in this particular situation?
Well, it's been in progress. So I would say at least 4 or so years ago, that 53%, like I said, 10 years ago, it was 53%, and it's been inching up marginally up to the point now where we're, like I said, better than 90% of the homes that are going off as soon as they come on. So it's been incremental. One of the things that I believe happened 10 years ago, we had a subset of buyers, millennials, and they really didn't have a great deal of apparent interest in buying homes. They were all about, we rent a home, we don't even necessarily need a car. They were all about lifestyle and being able to be mobile and ready to move here, there, and everywhere. So I suspect that developers and builders built with that in mind, thinking these are going to be a group of people that basically rent homes. So we have plenty of rental housing. I know you've seen it. There's not a shortage of housing. There's a shortage of available housing for purchase. So right now, the largest part of the buyer pool are millennials. So we didn't count on that, I would say, 10 years ago as developments were beginning to take way. So I'd say that's primarily a big contributor to it. You get into 2019 and 2020, things got compressed a little bit. 2020 was obviously our pandemic year. We're coming out of it, but everything came to a screeching halt. The entire economy in the nation came to a halt. So that had rippling effects in the housing industry. For example, with new construction, you literally had production plants for steel and for wood products closed their doors. So the production stopped, but the demand didn't. So even though we don't have enough resale for residential real estate, even the new build side is changing significantly.
So, okay, let's talk about this. We thought, most of us that aren't in the industry and stuff, we thought that the pandemic was going to open up the housing market and that it would be a good time to buy. But that has not happened. Even though a lot of people have lost their jobs and everything like that, they are out here actively looking for homes. As an agent, what have you experienced? Did you guys think that the pandemic was going to have this effect that it's having, or did you think that what we thought, that it was going to open up housing?
Personally, I don't know that I thought one way or the other. We were very fortunate in March of last year to be considered an essential service. So we never shut down. So where most businesses closed, we didn't have to. So we were still able to work. Fewer people were putting their houses on the market out of concern. So I think it might have constricted the market just a little bit. But we really didn't miss a beat. We saw historic numbers last year in sales. I expect historic numbers this year. So we continue to perform at a very high level with sales. And I don't know that we really anticipated that it would be an opportunity. Now, post-pandemic or post, last summer, as things didn't necessarily begin to get better, but I think people saw the opportunity for rentals and said, people are going to start going into foreclosure because the unemployment rate is so high. But right now we have a lot of protection, payroll protection, if you will, or CARES Act resources that have made people not necessarily whole, but allowed them to kind of coast along for a little bit longer. So I suspect, just like today, the news came out that the eviction moratorium or the eviction halt that the CDC had put in place was stricken down by a federal judge. So it was saying that the CDC had overreached and they didn't have the authority to make such a declaration. And so now we have some of those folks that are perhaps going to lose some protection. I think therein lies maybe an opportunity. So for example, as the payroll protection and the CARES Act resources and the unemployment resources, as those begin to dwindle away, many of these houses that have been in default are going to probably go into foreclosure. That may happen 12 to 18 or 24 months from now. I don't suspect that that's going to be a real solid reprieve that you can count on. But I think where there may be an opportunity for some subsets of the market, that might be one of them.
So, talking about everything that's happening, not just the pandemic, but the supply and demand, do we have a projection of when things will level off and maybe we'll catch up?
So my personal prediction, 3 to 5 years. So you heard it. You could say you heard it here first. Now, again, the caveat with that is if the current demand and the current buyer levels remain unchanged, my prediction is 3 to 5 years. Okay. Because it's going to take that long. I mean, it'll take easily that long if we didn't do it on the resale for residential housing. New builds can't catch up that fast. Right now, we have people that normally where you'd have a 4 to 7 month process, people aren't starting even if they go into contract today for another 3 months. That's how backed up that is. And the process is taking longer because we always have experienced, I shouldn't say always, but in more recent years, a shortage of skilled labor. Without enough qualified people to build the homes, the process has slowed significantly. So yeah. I think all things considered, if we continue with the trajectory that we have with the current buyer demand and new construction, we're going to be 3 to 5 years before we see a legitimate stabilization or a healthy balance between buyers and sellers, which creates the market that is ideal, not the seller's market, not the buyer's market, but just a healthy market.
Yeah. Yeah. And you guys, I am asking my personal questions. If you have questions as we sit here and talk, and you can chime in the comments, and we'll be sure to get to your question and answer. I wanted to make sure because sometimes I forget, I get so wrapped up in the conversation. Yes. See, Sam Pruitt said 3 to 5 years. Really? That blows me away that it's going to take that long to catch up. And something that I was reading the other day, and you mentioned before, is the price of lumber, how it's been affected because the pandemic, and that is kinking up the cost for building houses now. Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, for sure. So in some cases, a project to do a new build might, they give you your par value, but with the current crisis, I'll call it, that we're in, some projects have cost $20,000 to $35,000 more just because of the lumber increase.
20 to 30.
Yeah, easily. Yeah, somebody just told me today those posts, like under my deck. I know everybody can't know that, but the deck that I have at home, those posts, she said, were normally $10. They're $100 each right now.
Wow. Wow. Wow,
Yeah.
that's insane. So if somebody's decided that they want to try to buy a home, that they're ready to buy, what would be the very first thing that you would tell somebody as far as the home buying process, what they need to do?
So let me just share. I'm kind of concerned. There are people that look like us, quite frankly, that are going to be disproportionately impacted by today's market. And
Mhm.
I wish I had an answer. But as we know, we don't have the generational wealth that some of our counterparts have. So we don't have, in some cases, I have people bidding up to $50,000 more than the house is listed for just to win the bid. And in addition to that, when you offer $50,000 more, that means that you're probably $50,000 over value. And what that translates to for your mortgage is, and let's just use round numbers. Let's say you're buying it for it's listed for 300,000, and in order to win the bid, you offer 350,000, but the house is still only worth 300. So the lender's only going to give you a loan based on 300. So you have to bring your down payment for the 300,000, whatever that is, whether it's 3.5% for an FHA loan or as low as 5% for conventional. But now you got to do that plus bring the other $50,000 that you offered above the value of the house. That's not attainable by many people at all, let alone people of color. Black and brown communities simply don't have access to that type of capital, which is what's going to put us behind. We don't have the opportunity to even win the bid for the house.
So, I mean, that actually happened to a friend of mine last week. They offered on a home here in the Columbus metro 50 over asking, and it was an all cash offer. They had cash. They didn't get the house. So, even though that is like optimal for a house, I can't and I wish I knew what the winning bid was because I'm very curious. But what do you do, Mike? Like, I just don't know what do you do when you're getting turned down? You just start over? What are you telling your clients that are in that situation? Because I know you've had some clients that are going through that.
Sure. Well, in some cases, I tell them to adjust their expectations and adjust what their wish list is. So, for example, some young
Mhm.
people, I can't stress this enough. I'm a big proponent of building generational wealth. And one way to do that, one way that the magnets across this country have done that is through real estate. So, somebody who's 20 something, I encourage you, if you wanted a 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath house, wherever it is, condo in Westerville, downtown Columbus, if we can't compete in that market, let's look at other segments of the market where you can compete. The most important thing is that you become a homeowner. You may not become a homeowner in the market or in the exact type of home that you want, but maybe you look at a 2-family home. Maybe this is, instead of buying a multifamily as an investment property before or after you've owned your primary residence for 5 to 10 years as residual income, maybe we look at buying it now if that market is a little bit softer. There's the opportunity, looking beyond perhaps what you want in your target for the type of home that you want, looking outside the box to something where the market might be a little bit more soft.
So setting expectations and being flexible is what you got to be in this market, or is that what you're telling me?
Definitely telling you that, and how your realtor crafts the offer is critical. So where you said somebody offered all cash, $50,000 over list price, there was probably some other element to that contract that was accepted, whether it was delayed possession, rent back, however you want to quantify that. But there was something about another offer. It didn't necessarily have to be the actual sales price. So it's the
Oh,
whole package. You have to put together everything. The contract contains several things. Sometimes there's the case where a house probably needs some work. And if they accept an offer, if the seller knows that and says, we didn't put anything in this house over the past 10 years, we know it needs a new roof, it needs this, that, and the other. And we know that if somebody's doing an inspection, it may come back that it needs $15,000 worth of repairs. If you accept a contract that's all cash and has no inspection, for example, that's a win. That means that they don't have that risk of having to terminate that contract because something ran out or fell out of a contract because of an inspection result. So it's how you craft the offer that makes all the difference.
But before you find that dream home, is it better to go ahead and have your financing in place?
Thank you for mentioning that. It is critical always that you have the greatest financial stability that you can, making sure that your debt to income ratios are in line, paying down credit cards. I encourage you to get direct counsel from, perhaps a lender who can guide you specifically. Oftentimes we look at what we think makes sense, but because of all of the algorithms and what have you that go into calculating a credit score, that's not always what the system wants to see. So I always encourage you to align yourself with a good realtor who will align you with a good lender, a trusted professional, and help navigate that process. But it is paramount because once you have that and you have better credit scores, we have in some cases where you can have a lower credit score with an FHA loan. But a lot of buyers or a lot of sellers today are saying, there's an element of risk that comes with me accepting an FHA buyer. And they say, we don't want to go with that. They want to go with the conventional buyer. In order to have the best situation for a conventional loan, you need to have at least a 680 credit score. And that still comes with some, dings perhaps to the interest rate. You want to be at least 725 to have the pinnacle credit score to get the conventional loan. And if you can do that, that strengthens your opportunity when you make that offer in a competitive scenario.
So what is the minimum credit score to even get a loan right now?
So there are some opportunities that can go as low as 580, but they require other capitalization. So they have an expectation that you're going to put down, at least maybe 10 to 20%, which diminishes or reduces the risk from the lending perspective. So they're saying, we'll take a risk and loan to you if you have a 580 score, but we want you to have 10 or 20% down. So there's much less risk. And with that, you probably still have a relatively high interest rate.
Yeah. So getting that credit in line is so important before you even try to buy the house or get a loan. How far in advance? Like, say I want to buy a house next year. Should I be working on that now, or do I wait till next year to start working on that?
I think you should absolutely at least take a look at your credit today so you can see where you are. Credit doesn't improve overnight, literally. Even if you go pay off bills or collections, and let's just be candid, we're human. We all have stuff, right? So first of all, I say, find somebody you trust, align yourself again with a good realtor who's going to connect you with a good lender, and just put yourself out there. They're going to help guide. We see people every day that have blemishes on their credit. There's no judgment. Again, I can't stress enough. My goal is to see more people that look like us become homeowners. So you need to get your credit, look at your credit today. And it may take, in some cases, 6 to 12 months to get your credit score to that optimal number. So the sooner you know what you're looking at, the better the opportunity to get your credit up. And that, as I shared with you, can be a cornerstone to having the best type of loan, the best interest rate, and ultimately something that in a competitive scenario that the seller is going to accept.
Yeah. And, I think that's really good too, because you can set a goal for yourself. So none of us love looking at our credit score unless you've worked on it already. And it can give you a lot of anxiety and angst and all that, but it's a good thing to do. And then you know where you stand, and then you know what you need to do. So if you want to buy a house, if you're like 2022 is when I'm going to jump off the ledge and buy a house and I'm going to go for it. But at least now you can add to that goal. So knowing what you need to do to get to that goal. But okay, we have a question from the audience. How important is down payment in a competitive housing market? How important is the down payment?
So every seller perceives an offer in their own way. When we make an offer, we don't really talk about down payment from the buyer. Okay. What they do understand from the buyer is whether the type of loan, whether it's conventional or FHA. And again, many will take that into consideration when they evaluate 10 or 20 offers. It's like, how do we separate these, the good from the bad, so to speak? So they don't necessarily know down payment, but if you can demonstrate that you're going to put down $50,000, that suggests a strong borrower, a borrower with great resources and assets. And that gives a seller a great deal of confidence, because if you have means and resources, you're not as likely to come back and ask for, an electrical outlet to be replaced. You just kind of absorb some of those things. So
Right.
while the seller may not know exactly what your down payment is, if it is significant enough, I think that it's a good idea if your realtor team puts or at least shares the information that, hey, we're going to buy this house. We're conventional buyers. And by the way, we're going to put down $50,000 when we make the purchase. That speaks volumes. It gives a lot of credibility to the offer. So finding a way to incorporate that in the terms that you're submitting for the offer makes a big difference. But otherwise, generally, they just know loan type, so they don't necessarily know the down payment.
So one thing that I just was thinking about, I watched my HGTV and all that stuff. They talk about writing letters with your offer. Are people still doing that? And is that really like a thing? Like, does it help?
It is a thing. And I have to say that it is perhaps, and I know this is hard to really believe, but it's not the right thing to do.
Oh, tell me why.
Sure. So it creates an opportunity for discrimination.
Ooh.
And while we never, people do it with the best of intentions, whether it's something that says, hey, I'd love to see my family grow up in this house. I saw your family pictures up on the wall. Very innocent with their intention. But it suggests that if that person takes that offer, if that seller accepts that offer, they're accepting the offer based on the familial status of that buyer in that case. And familial status is a protected class statewide, citywide, and federally. So you can't discriminate based on that. And again, while it seems a very innocent thing to do, it is still a fair housing violation to do that. And by writing the letter, and even me as a realtor, if I give somebody that letter, I am basically supporting that discrimination or potential discrimination. So what some people affectionately call a love letter, I won't do it, and I discourage any of people in my industry from doing it because it could become a fair housing violation.
So, I mean, if you think you're being discriminated against, what do you do? Like that, I think that's something important for minority buyers to know. Like, what do we do if we think we're being discriminated against?
Sure. There are housing agencies across the state that you can go and file a complaint or just share the information. And if they sort of see smoke and realize there's fire, they will pursue that.
Wow. Because, historically, there have been issues, redlining, all kinds of things that have happened uh, in the housing market in the past against Black and brown people. And it has made things unfair. So I'm very interested that, there are resources for people that may feel like, hey, this happened to me and this may not be fair. Can you look into it? So that's, I think, really good to know.
Yeah, I think it's the Ohio Civil Rights Commission that would evaluate that.
Ohio Civil Rights Commission. So speaking of programs and things to help, what are there down payment assistant programs in Columbus that can help people? Like if I want to buy a house and I don't have a whole lot for down payment, is there a program I can get in that can help me get there?
There are still down payment programs. They do come with strings. They will usually cause you to have a higher interest rate. Maybe closing costs are a little bit higher, but they are out there and available. They're not looked at very favorably in some cases in a competitive scenario where we are, which is again why we are disproportionately impacted in some of these scenarios. But they oftentimes come with strings attached, as I mentioned, but time. So there are some programs, for example, the American Dream Down Payment Initiative, the Columbus Addy program. Great program, and in some markets, it is very successful. But the program could take up to 8 weeks. And right now, many sellers are looking for offers where they can close in less than 30 days. And when you put in something that takes 6 to 8 weeks, that's, a month and a half to 2 months. That's not very attractive or appealing to many sellers. but there are definitely programs
So,
out there.
but if I want to be more competitive and not use a program and I have a smaller down payment on my own, is that still kind of attractive? That's more attractive than waiting 6 to 8 weeks, you would say, maybe?
Definitely, except in the case, I mean, most everybody, so baseline things, most everybody wants to close faster. As I shared with
Mhm.
you, sometimes people want delayed possession, which means that, you close in 15 or 20 or 30 days, but you can stay in the house for another 60 days because your new build isn't going to be ready, or you're not relocating to, Atlanta or wherever you're going. You need housing for the next 60 days. So being able to incorporate that in my offer is attractive to that seller. So being able to find that out ahead of time, knowing what the seller needs, what the seller wants, is critical. So an 8-week closing isn't a big deal to somebody that wants delayed possession anyway, only to the extent that they haven't closed first. So in an
Yeah.
ideal world, they want to close. They want to close as soon as possible, so the deal is done. It's not at risk or vulnerable, but they still want to stay in the house maybe another 60 days. So by being able to offer them that olive branch, it's still very attractive to them.
Yeah, I think that that's really something to think about. So sweetening the offer, but it also shows that the realtor you pick is super important. Like, what are a couple tips for people that are looking for a realtor? What should they look for that can give them the sign that this is a good realtor?
I would say you want a realtor who you've met through a referral. So somebody that has the biggest sign outside or has the loudest commercial, if you will, isn't always the best. But by getting a direct
Yeah.
referral, so if you know somebody that had a good experience, it's likely that they have a good realtor. And by at least interviewing that realtor, you give yourself a good chance to have that same experience with their competency and being able to navigate some of the more difficult intricacies that go along with not only buying a home, because I mean, buying a home is intimidating enough for many people. So you want to
Yeah.
find somebody that can help you navigate the process, trustworthy, et cetera. But in this current market, you need somebody that's up here. It's not just somebody that can do it adequately, but you need somebody to do it at the highest level to be able to compete and win in this current market.
Yeah. So you pick the right realtor and making sure they understand your situation and know how to pitch you, then you have a better chance of getting that dream home. But what if I have the dream home? Now, here's the scenario. A lady at the local grocery store where I go to, she small talks with me. I think she recognizes me even with the mask on, that, I'm a regular there. And she was telling me she lives in the Near East Side and they keep trying to buy her home. So I know that a lot of these neighborhoods where they were lower income or Black and brown neighborhoods, they're getting gentrified. What's some advice if someone is thinking about selling, or do they hold on to their home? Like, what do we do with these homes that our Black and brown family members have and that the people are trying to buy?
Well, I think the most important thing is to look at your personal situation and say, what do I need? What best serves me for the next 5, 10, or 25 or 30 years? And if it suggests that, let's say an older couple or an older, auntie lives in the inner city and she's in a 2-story home that, she's 60, 70, 80 years old, the reality of her being able to age in place in that home is not very great. So in that personal situation, it might benefit her to consider selling in this current market because she can hopefully make a lot of money and transition into a place that she can actually age in place, whether that's a
Yeah.
condo, senior housing. So again, it's so important that you look at your personal situation. What are your needs? And not just for today, but for tomorrow and beyond. I think that there are opportunities to sell homes, not necessarily exclusively to Black and brown people, but people still have a choice, who they sell their home to. And in some cases, people may make a decision that they want to sell it to somebody that looks like them. That could border on that discrimination thing again. It's kind of a very difficult thing to navigate, and important that you realize how detrimental that can be. Those are federal housing violations. But in some cases, you can do it if you do it the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. I just, I see a lot of chatter on Facebook, Instagram and stuff, people talking about, I have this historical home and people want to buy it. And some people are telling them, sell it, make the money and run. And other people are, hold on to it. So I think it's very sound advice that thinking the long term and not just the dollar that you get today can be so greatly impactful and beneficial to you. So, the whole point of this conversation is knowledge and learning about the market and why we're in this situation, and empowering more Black and brown people to be able to own a home if that's what you want to do, or own investment properties. Is the market as crazy for investment properties in Columbus as well?
It depends. So we have the macro market, which is the metropolitan area, and then micro markets. So today we had a buyer that was looking in the north of Broad, King Lincoln district area.
Mhm.
And we were looking at two-family homes. A new one came on the market, I think, yesterday. And those homes have increased significantly in value, or at least what the asking prices are and some of the selling prices. But
Yeah.
we had one come on the market today that I think it was in the mid 400s. And, we have to say, just because somebody's asking that, does that really mean that's what it's worth? And after further
Mm.
consideration, I looked at two other homes in the same micro market area, and they had been on the market for over 30 days, and they were similarly priced or less, and comparable in size and degree of updating or renovations. So that suggests to me that, maybe that market is a little bit softer as I was describing, or not what some people are projecting. So
Yeah.
in this case, at that $400,000 mark, it may look a little bit more attractive than at the 450 mark because of the
Yeah.
competition. Oftentimes, when I look at listings, I don't only look at when a seller comes to me and says, "Hey, I want to sell my house. How much is it worth?" I don't only look at what has sold, even though that's what an appraiser will use as a tool to determine the actual value. But I look at what's active, not selling. So, what
Mm.
is the competition that's out there? You might have 5 homes on the market that have been on the market for over 60 days, and that's very telling. That's suggesting that the market's a little bit softer, at least at that higher price point. And as things get down in the price point, or are a more palatable number for the buyers, it becomes compelling, and that's when they go off the market.
Yeah, and you know how I am. I watch the market whether I'm trying to buy or not, just because I'm nosy. Call it what you want. But I noticed that there are houses that literally go on the market and then hit that contingency like within hours. But then, like you said, there's some that I see that have been on the market for a while, and I'm like, they need to look at why that house isn't selling quick, because majority of the houses in the area seem to be going fairly quickly.
Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right, and that's why it's good that you have a good realtor. In a lot of cases, as you were describing, people that might be in an urban environment who are encouraged to hold on to their house until the
Mhm.
market goes up even higher, and it's just like, at what point do you say enough is enough, right?
Yeah.
And so that person, in many ways, they're saying, well, I want 450. I won't take a dollar less than 450, and they're just kind of hell bent on that's my number, and nobody can get them off of it. And when you have somebody that's inflexible like that, it just sits on the market. And as realtors, as professionals, we recognize it. Just like I was able to share with the buyer today, hey, we have these other comparable homes. Let's go out and take a look at those before we make a decision to act on this new one that just came on the market that's priced where these others were 30 days ago, and now they've experienced some price adjustments down. So again, don't despair, don't give up hope. The market will evolve. We will not always be where we are, but even in today's market, there are some opportunities. If you look with a good realtor, they can help uncover some gems possibly.
So, thinking about this and something else I saw somebody talking about, they think that there's going to be a market bubble. You remember the bubble? What was that? 2010? Is that when we had that bubble that burst?
Sure.
Uh, do you anticipate there being a bubble with this one, or is it just going to kind of level off?
I think it'll level off. I don't consider what we're in right now a bubble. Um, and I don't even know that I would call the last bubble a bubble. We had a lot of things that put us in that situation. And I can get
Yeah.
into detail about it, but it's a little complex. But we had situations where, and again, to use round numbers, let's say a house was worth $150,000, and you had people that would offer 150,000, do an appraisal that came in at 150,000, or actually, let me back that up. House is listed for 100,000.
Mhm.
Let me get my train of thought here. House was listed for $100,000. It was only worth $80,000. There were some lenders with some unscrupulous practices that said, we know it's worth 80, but we're going to go ahead and get you into this thing, even though it's listed at 100. And when those people defaulted, we also know that there were a lot of opportunities for people to just get a loan by signing their name. They were giving out loans very easily. The mortgage industry was in, they were doing everything they could to push loans through. So that $100,000 house that was worth $80,000 given to a borrower that probably didn't qualify even for the $80,000 house defaulted. And
Yeah.
when the default occurred, now the bank's standing holding the bag saying, we have an asset here worth $80,000 that we loaned $100,000 on. They got upside down. And that's why the federal government had to step in and support the banks, because they were holding notes for loans far in excess of what the value of the properties were. So that's a whole different scenario, what got us there then. And we don't have that today. So we learned from our mistakes in a lot of cases and corrected some of those unscrupulous practices through new practices and new requirements for distancing between the relationship between the mortgage lender and the appraiser. Now we use companies by mandate. The mortgage lender has to go to an appraisal management company, a middleman who does kind of a spin of the wheel and says, hey, we have an appraisal over here and we're going to pay X number of dollars. Who wants it? And then the appraiser accepts the job. So they're the go-between, the intermediary between the lender that was the problem in the past that we're describing and the appraiser that might come together and make a number work when it wouldn't normally work. So there's a huge separation between the two now. So that didn't happen. That's not happening right now. I think a lot of appraisers are doing exceptionally great jobs at establishing value for homes. I find some come in at a $1,500 difference, and that's huge. If an appraiser is doing that kind of a detailed report and can't come up with $1,500 to match that price, that means he's doing his job, in my opinion. He's not necessarily just trying to kill a deal, but he's getting a better assessment of true value. And not only that, in today's market, there's the demand. People are coming to Columbus, as we talked about before the show started, because of job opportunities. And as long as that continues and we have limited inventory, we'll continue to go this way. Now, I'm a big proponent of going this way, not this way, right? We want to grow in a very stabilized manner so that we can eventually level off. Going from here to here, that hurts, right? But going from here to here, that makes sense. And I think that's where we'll be in that 3 to 5 year period. We won't find prices going back or regressing, but instead more that stabilization or flattening.
Okay. All right. So people, do the research, reach out to a realtor so they can hook you up with a lender so you can start getting your credit in line and become a home owner. Finding out what is going on is half the battle, the beginning steps, right, Mike?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So definitely get with somebody that you trust and can be your trusted advisor through that entire process.
Yeah. Any parting words or pieces of advice that you want to give that maybe I didn't ask you before we bounce up out of here?
I'd say just be very intentional and thoughtful about everything that you do. Don't make hasty decisions and don't make compromising decisions that you can't afford. Right now, a lot of people, just to win bids, are making decisions that compromise their position, whether it's inspections, et cetera. And if you don't have the ability to kind of back that up or a safety net, you could be very vulnerable. And I discourage you stepping out on a limb. I want you to become homeowners, but responsible homeowners.
Yeah. Definitely want to do this, but in a smart and responsible way. So do your research, do the knowledge, find out your situation, find yourself a good realtor so they can hook you up with a good lender, and then do the deed. Did I get it right? I made the
You got it
checklist.
right. You did. You always do it right.
Oh, thanks, darling. Well, it was a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much. Look, everybody, his contacts are scrolling below. If you want to find out some more information, reach out to my friend, Michael Jones. He will help you find a home or point you in the right direction. He has an amazing team of realtors in his office that can also help you if he's too busy, because he is a busy person. Yes.
Well,
Episode 4 of Wine Down Wednesday is May the 19th. I hope you will be here with your glass of wine. I've been over here sipping on my Pinot, and I hope everybody has a safe time, and save this video. Send it to friends that are talking about buying houses. There's a great wealth of knowledge here, and we hope you have a great evening. Thank you. Bye, everybody.